we have got our second storyteller for the evening. Start clapping, make them very welcome. It is Bevan Warner with his story, Melbourne. Zero homelessness is possible. Woo!
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming out and being interested in community on a cold Friday night. I'm a white, middle-aged, cisgendered male, and the reason that's relevant is my awareness of my privilege has only been discovered through curiosity and the passage of time. And I mention that because what I'm going to talk about involves a whole lot of people who don't have the privilege that I have, and also because it's National Sorry Day. And on National Sorry Day, I think the sorry means we don't do it again, and we learn from it, and that's why I'm a yes vote in the referendum for the voice that's coming up at the end of the year. So I started in launch housing about 12 months before COVID. I'd had a career in human rights and other issues, and I felt that I understood structural disadvantage, but I didn't know what hit me when I got into the housing and homelessness sector and in the not-for-profit space where you run your organisations on the smell of an oily rag. And when homelessness was present and COVID hit, we had always had a problem with people who didn't have secure housing and all the threats to their physical and mental well-being that was associated with rough sleeping or not having locks on your doors or couch surfing. But when COVID hit, we had a public health emergency because our homelessness population was a threat to us. So for a whole range of reasons, good and bad, economic, stimulating the economy, government rushed right out of the door to get everyone off the streets into hotels. And that was a wonderful thing to see the government and the community unite to safely house over 4,000 people held in hotel rooms for over 7 months on average, and over 2,500 individuals and families move into secure public housing as a consequence of COVID. So there was some amazing work done. It's hard for me to talk about because the personal and professional toll of COVID was pretty immense, right? So professionally, I went from a 40-hour week to suddenly, with no rules or template, running an organisation that was a designated essential service. Staff had to go to work, they had to walk on the streets, they had to interact with people in ways that we subsequently understood were unsafe. We were involved in health services, in setting up COVID isolation recovery facilities. We employed more staff. We were working 7 days a week. And that was a long period of sort of professional toll, but amazing results that I'll forever be proud of. My personal story is that through family circumstances, I was locked in and did 2 long stretches of isolation by myself in a flat in Collingwood. And that was hard to see all of my family and grandchildren born on the other side of the country to be separated from my wife for long periods and to sort of be trying to manage my mental health in that situation. I know a lot of people across the state. Our most lockdown city in the world had similar stories. So it's really lovely to come along and talk a bit about that, get a bit of the pus out, if you like. But I guess what I really want to say is I'm optimistic about the future. So problem number one is we've snapped back into business as usual. So the worst thing is, despite having all of these free hotel rooms because there were no tourists around, our traditional providers of emergency accommodation have vacated the market. So now, just as the presentation of people in acute housing crisis is coming on stronger than ever, we've got fewer options for people, and it's taken staff 4 times as long to arrange emergency accommodation from a mum with a couple of kids who turns up at our front counter at 9 a.m. in the morning, cold and hungry and not knowing what to do. And at the same time, the cost of living pressures and the concern of the community about your own back pocket and getting by means that the community could tilt back into sort of me first, community second. But what we understood from the research at the height of COVID, there was an outbreak of empathy in the community for people around housing because we were all locked in. But suddenly we had this sort of existential connection with, is our home too small? Is our internet fast enough? when can I get out? I've only got an hour's exercise, but we're all suddenly connected in very conscious ways with housing, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. And imagine what it would be like if you didn't have it, or you wanted something more or different in your housing. So, and we measured that. So what we've understood as an organisation is that if we want to make real change, we need to take the community with us, and we need to take people who don't work alongside us, who don't currently think like us, with us. So we need to build bridges, build new alliances. It's no good having a splendid conversation with people who already think like you. So our Melbourne Zero campaign is an idea that Melbourne, which is a city I choose to live in, I chose to come here 16 years ago. I love it. It's an amazing place to live. And the self-talk about Melbourne is pretty simple. It says, we're better than Sydney. We're world-class. We're internationally orientated. We're the best place for students to get an amazing education. We've got a world-class connection to motorsport, to tennis, to culture. We feel that we are a progressive, internationally orientated city. We've got world-class biotech, and that's how Melbourne talks about itself. And much of that is true. So let's leverage that wonderful self-description of Melbourne being a world leader and say, why shouldn't Melbourne be a world-leading city in ending homelessness? Now, to end homelessness, you have to counter stigma, because when you walk past someone who's sleeping rough, we're hardwired as individuals, human beings, to alleviate our own discomfort. And it's awkward for us psychologically when we walk past someone who's in distress. So we start to do things subconsciously like, oh, that person's made poor choices. Why are they smoking cigarettes? The government's not doing something. So we externalize all the things around homelessness because it makes us feel awkward. And then when we hear things like 100,000 people on the public housing waiting list, wow, that's huge. How are we ever going to solve that? Or if you travel around the world, you'll see homelessness in lots of different places. So there's lots of things that we get which suggest to us that ending homelessness is not possible, or it's so big that it's insoluble. We'll never be able to do it in the next 5 years or in my lifetime. So what we recognise through a lot of behavioural research is we need to create practical, optimistic and real opportunities for people to engage with this simple statement that zero homelessness is possible. Other cities, other communities are doing it by connecting a bottom-up approach with a top-down approach, policy and funding, and making sure that we understand that there's 179 people sleeping rough in the CBD. That was last Monday. So it's not beyond us to personalise and humanise a response for those 179 people and to prioritise their housing and their support needs so that they get into housing quickly and they get the right support to sustain that housing. So the Melbourne Zero campaign is an opportunity for individuals, families, businesses and brands to make a statement by becoming a network member, an individual member, to build out and demonstrate a movement to politicians and decision makers and other people in the community that we care enough to want to make Melbourne a world-leading city in ending homelessness. We have strategies to benchmark ourselves against other capital cities around the world, and that will come later. But importantly, inside the Melbourne Zero campaign framework are opportunities for you to do practical things. Local governments need to have the right planning laws, but most importantly, we need to have an outbreak of conversation, and we've designed a challenge in there that's suitable for individuals, families, teams in businesses to experience what it's like for 24 hours to live on $10 a day, having only one bag for all your possessions, and to sleep somewhere other than your own bed, in your family, with your teams. And there's an educational and immersion opportunity there for people to be curious about what it's like and to galvanise them into be part of our social movement for change. So for me, my message tonight to all of you here is you're probably already mostly persuaded. You wouldn't be coming to a citizens and civics night if you didn't care about community. So what is it that you can do to amplify the idea and recruit people to the cause that Melbourne should be a world-leading city in ending homelessness? I defy you to find anyone who's going to argue in the reverse. The question then becomes, well, how would we actually do that? You know, what would be involved? What individual small steps could we take as a family, as a team in a workplace? What could you ask your employer to do? Why wouldn't they join their brand to that idea? We've had some iconic Melbourne brands join that idea. The Readings Bookstore are one of the latest brands to come on. And that's really important because when homelessness advocates or social justice advocates take advocacy up to government, they actually stop listening as you walk in the door because they expect the homelessness guy to say exactly what I'm going to say. But when somebody from an ally from another sector, when the CEO of a bank, when the CEO of a tech company, when the school principal or a school community identifies homelessness as something that they want to learn and teach about and they want to talk about to their local member, people stop and take notice. So the Melbourne Zero campaign is a community activation campaign, individuals, families, businesses and brands to do practical things and to grow out a social movement for change, which says, why shouldn't Melbourne be a world leading city in ending homelessness? Would you be proud to be a member of that community? Would you be proud to be a member of that movement that made that happen? So my reflection on COVID, it was pretty shit. We got some amazing results for people. Some of our clients had dental work that was badly needed, that they hadn't had for 20 years, reconnected with family, with children. We made an amazing difference to so many lives. Let's not go back to business as usual. Let's go forward and make Melbourne a world leading city in ending homelessness. Thanks very much.
Thank you.